Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Edna.
And I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. China Airlines pilots go on strike, disrupting travel plans of hundreds of passengers.
Man who escaped custody through sealing of hospital toilet sentenced to jail.
And bogus marriage syndicate busted, which aided foreign domestic helpers obtain dependent visas so they could work in Hong Kong.
A pilot strike forced the cancellation of over 20 China Airlines flights today.
The pilots' union said it had no choice but to take industrial action after the airline's management declined to increase manpower for long-haul flights. Riley Chan reports.
Hundreds of passengers were stranded at Kaohsiung International Airport this morning after Taiwan's main air carrier cancelled flights. Some lucky China Airlines passengers were booked onto other flights, but most were stuck. This man said he found out his flight was cancelled when he arrived at the airport and blamed the airline for poor arrangements for affected passengers, especially as the strike happened in the midst of the Lunar New Year. This passenger blamed the pilots for the disruption. These pilots, excuse my language, are simply jerks, he said. China Airlines President Xie Shiqian bowed in apology for the sudden travel chaos. He said the company would transfer passengers to other airlines and offer refunds with service charges waived. By taking industrial action, Xie accused the union of breaching an agreement the airline made with them in August and urged the union to return to the negotiating table. Last year, the pilots' union agreed to suspend strike action for 1 year to give the airline time to improve working conditions. They complained about the working hours during long-haul flights and demanded more pilots be deployed for fatigue flights that last for more than 11 hours. Talks between the airline and union resumed last week, but they broke down shortly after. The company refused to hire more pilots, citing a sharp rise in personnel costs that would undermine its competitiveness. We would like to ask China Airlines, are costs and competitiveness more important than air safety and pilots' health? A unionist asked. The group said the strike would continue until the airline addressed their demands, adding that over 100 pilots have handed in their work passes in a show of support. At Hong Kong's airport, some tour groups and passengers were also affected by the labor action. The airport authorities said it would monitor the situation closely and asked passengers to check with the airline for updates. Riley Chen, HKIBC.
A mainland businessman who escaped from police custody through the sealing of a hospital toilet has been sentenced to 18 months in prison.
During sentencing, the magistrate said the defendant showed no respect for the city's judicial system and cost authorities extra time and money in order to bring him to justice. More from Riley Chan.
Leon Lee was taken to Eastern Magistrates Court this morning for sentencing for a number of charges. The mainland businessman was arrested in November after he fled a 2015 trial for presenting a fake Hong Kong ID card at a U.S. consulate. After he was arrested, he complained of feeling unwell and was taken to Queen Mary Hospital, where he escaped from the toilet, leading to a 36-hour manhunt. He had pled guilty to 4 charges last month, including using a forged identity card, failing to surrender, escaping from lawful custody, and resisting a police officer. In mitigation, the 34-year-old's counsel Fu Chung-sang asked the magistrate for mercy and discretion in sentencing. He said Lee had been detained for 108 days in total and that he jumped bail because his son was critically ill in Beijing. Magistrate Lee Xiu-ho said all 4 charges were serious. While the defendants had a clear record, high level of education and achievements in business, the seriousness of the offences outweighed his sympathy for the family, Lee said. The magistrate also challenged the lawyer's claim that the businessman fled his trial in 2015 for his sick son, as the medical report came after he was arrested. He lambasted Lee for not respecting the city's judicial system and costing authorities extra time and money to bring him to justice. After taking into consideration the businessman's guilty plea, Lee sentenced him to jail for 18 months. The magistrate hoped Lee would reflect on what he had done during his time in prison. Riley Chen, HKIBC.
The Immigration Department has smashed a bogus marriage syndicate which helped foreign domestic helpers obtain dependent visas, in a first for the city.
But the department insisted these were only isolated cases out of about 30,000 dependent visa applications received each year. They look like ordinary couples, celebrating birthdays, dressing up for their weddings, and having a sweet moment at home. Except these photos were all staged as part of a bogus marriage scheme. In a first, the Immigration Department revealed that foreign domestic helpers were involved in a syndicate specializing in fake marriages. Charging up to $150,000 per person, the group's customers included mainland women and also domestic workers from India and Nepal seeking dependent visas.
The syndicate tried to persuade them that by entering into such a forced marriage, they can obtain a dependent visa. By obtaining the dependent visa, you can free to take up any employment in Hong Kong. So because the case involved are only domestic helpers from India and from Nepal, for reasons that one of the syndicate members knows speaking Indian language and also Nepal language.
Following an investigation, the department arrested a 55-year-old security guard in 2017 who was believed to be the mastermind. To evade detection, ciphered messages were used in the group's day-to-day operations, while payments, usually in installments, were deposited into jockey club betting accounts. A total of 37 people were arrested, including